a major showdown over Trump immigration doctrine, and it is playing out in the state of Connecticut, where the governor is actually telling police, do not enforce federal law here. Do not cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement agents. In moments, we will speak to someone very much on the other side of that argument, Wendy Hartling of Connecticut, whose daughter Casey was tragically murdered by a criminal illegal immigrant who was supposed to have been deported. But first, Trace Gallagher on Wendy's story and on what is going on tonight in Connecticut and other places across this country. Trace.
Martha, we know the biggest cities in the country, including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and others, have already said they basically won't work with the federal government when it comes to illegal immigrants. Now you can add the Constitution state to that list. Connecticut Governor Dannel Malloy has now sent a letter to his state's law enforcement saying they should not cooperate with immigration and customs enforcement, saying, quoting here, ICE detainer requests are not requests. They are not warrants or orders, and this should only be honored as set forth in Connecticut law unless accompanied by a judicial warrant. And the governor goes on to say police should not allow ICE agents to question those in local custody. Here's how the White House responded. Watch.
And the idea that you can decide which laws to agree or not to agree with or follow or not follow undermines our entire rule of law. And so I would suggest that is not a great sign to be sending to the people of Connecticut and the people of this country.
Governor Malloy says he wants everyone to be supported respectfully and fairly under the laws. But what about 25-year-old Casey Chadwick, who in June of 2015 was stabbed to death inside her apartment in Norwich, Connecticut by Jean Jacques, an illegal Haitian immigrant who had just been released from prison. Federal agents say he should have been deported long before the murder, but because he's a violent criminal, Haiti refused to take him back. Here's Casey Chadwick's mother testifying before Congress.
The tragedy of Casey's death is not an isolated case and is occurring frighteningly around the country. Something has to be done to fix this horrible problem.
Wendy Hartling is now part of a group called the Remembrance Project, which advocates for families whose loved ones were killed by illegal immigrants. Martha.
Thank you, Trace. So here now, Wendy Hartling, whose story you just heard. Wendy, good evening. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. When you hear the words of Dannel Malloy, the governor of your home state, and you think back to what happened to you, what goes through your mind?
I'm outraged. I mean, how can he say not to enforce the laws that are already out there and in place? It hurts. It hurts me, and it will hurt a lot of people that, you know, we tragically lost our children to criminal illegal aliens that should have been deported or should still be deported, and, you know, it's not happening. It's not happening fast enough.
You know, I know after Casey's death, you spent some time with some of the leadership and the senators in Connecticut, Senator Blumenthal, Chris Murphy. They said to you, quote, "We will do everything in our power to ensure that this grievous error that made possible the murder of one of our constituents can never, ever happen again." Did they follow through on that?
No. When I testified in Washington, D.C., that was the last I heard from either one of, from Joe Courtney and from Blumenthal and Murphy. I did not hear any feedback, any follow-up, nothing.
Did you try to get in touch with them?
They tried to, they've always sending me, you know, emails asking me to donate money, and I tried to write back to them, what about Casey? What are you doing about Casey? What are you doing about the immigration problems and the deportation problems? And then I would not get a response.
So now what Senator Blumenthal is saying, and we know that the governor agrees because we just heard from him, he says that Trump's immigration plans threaten to rip apart families and strip away legal rights. How does that make you feel?
It's very upsetting because they know what's going on, because the Remembrance Project especially has really been out there in the news. Our founder, her name is Marie Espinoza, she's been with the president on several occasions talking about the immigration problem and how many families like myself and Casey's father and sisters and brothers, stepmother, whatever, grandparents, how is that going to make us feel, the angel moms, the angel dads, how is it going to make us feel knowing that this Governor Malloy does not want to enforce ICE he wants to ignore the federal government, he wants to ignore ICE. It's just wrong. It's wrong. It's not right.
Can you tell us, because we've seen behind you, there's beautiful pictures of Casey. We've been putting those pictures up on the screen. Tell us what happened to your daughter.
We were just making plans. I was halfway through a CNA course. She was a CNA. She was very good. And we were making plans to get an apartment. And I was finishing up my CNA course, but halfway through it is when the tragedy hit home, and so I didn't finish. But Casey was very, very, very smart. She only had 1 year of high school. She got her GED in 2 months. She passed her CNA classes and the state test without opening a book. She was a very smart girl. She was very well loved, and by friends, family. At her wake, there was clearly over 300 people that came to her wake. And she was beautiful. She was a tiny little thing, but she was beautiful. And she's gone. And then it's wrong that she's gone. She should still be here with her family.
I know,
and her friends.
That you smile when you can, but you never lose the sense of this pain, and I don't want to, make it worse for you, but I do think it's important that people know what happened to her. She was murdered, correct?
She was brutally murdered. She was stabbed over 15 times and shoved in this little closet that she and her boyfriend did not use. So when her boyfriend went to look for her, her car was there and he couldn't find her. He left, and then he came back with a friend, and then he opened the closet. And the 911 call would make anybody cry, listening to her boyfriend. It was heart-wrenching. There's nothing to describe the feeling that you feel in your. It's just a horrible, horrible, agonizing, there's a good word, agonizing feeling in my stomach every single solitary day. Every moment of every single solitary day. Work is great. I work at McDonald's, yep. and it's busy, and that'll keep me, yep. It keeps me so I'm not always constantly, but then again, I come home or there's not a lot of customers. I feel that pain and that agony, and
Wendy, thank you.
It's never going to go away.
Wendy Hartling, thank you for sharing your story with us, and we hope that the Governor of Connecticut is listening tonight as well. Thank you.